Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone. We will go ahead and get started so we can make the most of our time with our candidates. But welcome to the public forum for the candidates for Monroe County Council at Large. I'm your moderator, Laura Rusk. I'm a third-year law student at IU's Maurer School of Law and absolutely pleased to be your moderator today. This forum is hosted by the League of Women Voters of Bloomington-Monroe County, and we are pleased to have several incredible co-sponsors: the Big Ten Voting Challenge, Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce, IU PACE, Political and Civic Engagement, Monroe County Now, South Central Indiana Citizens Climate Lobby, and the Monroe County branch of the NAACP. So thank you very much to our co-sponsors. And thank you to CATS for recording this event. I will now take a moment to review the ground rules which the candidates have all accepted prior to this forum. Each candidate will have 1 minute to make an opening statement. Candidates will respond in turn to questions posed by the moderator, myself, rotating which candidate will answer first, and responses are limited to 90 seconds unless I specify a different time if we were to do something like a speed round at the end. Audience members are invited to submit questions. I believe that cards have been passed around, but if you need a card at any point, you can raise your hand and Ralph or Sue will get you a card and they will get those to me. And I will have discretion to choose which questions to ask. Each candidate will be asked to also make a closing statement, which will be 1 minute, and the candidates have agreed to civil discourse. So with that, we will get started, and we will start with Cheryl for your opening statement. 1 minute.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Cheryl Munson, currently an at-large member of the County Council, which is the fiscal arm of county government. If you live anywhere in the county, including the city of Bloomington, the towns of Ellettsville and Steinsville, smaller villages like Harrodsburg and Unionville, or the rural parts of the county, I represent you and hope to continue to for another 4 years. I am running for re-election because I love Monroe County, our beautiful setting, and our diverse and vibrant community. And I have a passion for public service. It is an honor to work on behalf of the people of the county and to help shape the future that our children and grandchildren will inherit. For the immediate future, I will work on how best to fund the construction and annual operations of a new Justice Center, while continuing to fund the myriad other essential services our residents count on. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Henry, and I'm running at large to be your newest member of the Monroe County Council. I'm running because I'm worried. I'm running because yesterday morning in Monroe County, 5,000 students went to school on free and reduced lunches, that 1 out of every 4 people in our community live in poverty, that we have a downtown residency of 60% of our community that rents, and half of their income goes to that rent. And when 6 businesses close over the holiday season around the square, when people can't afford to go downtown to buy a craft beer or a latte in our community, let alone take their family out to eat, we have some challenges. We have challenges when we have layoffs at our largest employers that happened this week. So I'm running because, as someone who's been involved in this community for off and on for 20 years, as a government employee of our county government, as the chair of our Democratic Party, and as a volunteer in organizations going back to the early 2000s, we need a county council that funds our values, that gets stuff done in our community, that completes the projects that we've been waiting on for the past term, gets a criminal justice center that is constitutional and back to work. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Trent Deckard. I'm so happy that the League of Women Voters has us here. I presently serve on the Monroe County Council as an at-large member and am currently president of the council, and I've been in leadership for the last 3 years. I bring to this position the same things that I have to positions at the federal level of government as well as the state. I bring some of that experience about getting things done. And simply put, my motto in this election is one that will not be a surprise to anyone. I believe that elected officials can work together, that when they do, they can get good things done for the people they represent, and they can answer those hard questions about housing, affordability, infrastructure needs, hunger in the community, what our local not-for-profits are saying, and how we protect free and fair elections in an age where elected officials are encouraged to not work together. I think we can set the example here. I intend to do that and bring 9 generations of family experience in this community, plus my work as a lecturer at the Kelley School of Business, into play to assist this in the best way I can.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Matt Caldy and I'm running for Monroe County Council. Simply put, I'm running because I care and because there's work to be done. This is a great community to live in, but it's also a very expensive one. And as someone who's struggled mightily to achieve economic security in the decade after graduating, I bring a valuable perspective to the council. I believe that I can serve as a bridge between different groups here in Monroe County. I do have a college degree and I work for IU, but I've also held a variety of blue-collar jobs and am deeply familiar with the challenges that many workers face. I understand how the types of employment and housing choices in Monroe County can make people feel like there's no good options for them. As our community grows, we must ensure that it grows in a way that is affordable and sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for your opening statements. We will now move on to questions, and I will just remind the audience members, please provide your questions. The candidates are here to respond to your concerns, and we would like to hear from you all. Makes it more fun that way. So I will go ahead and get started with some questions we received before the forum started with our first question, which is, what are your qualifications for county council? And David, we'll start with you.
Sure. Well, I think if any of us have the qualifications that we're citizens that live in our county, and I think it's important to say that at the front of that question that anybody that stands up to run for office by virtue of living here, it has that qualification. But in terms of talking about resumes, I've worked in county government. I'm the only, if elected, I'd be the only person in elected leadership that's actually worked as a county employee in the public health department, where I started after graduating IU with my master's in local government in 2005. For the past 20 years, I've worked in and out of government service in the government of the District of Columbia, advising the mayor's office on HR policy, to our National Governors Association in Washington, D.C. on emergency management policy, and in public safety consulting for the past decade. I also created and teached courses at the Indiana University School of Public and Environmental Affairs on those topics and educating the next generation of leaders coming out of our schools in the spaces of emergency management and homeland security. But in terms of my involvement in the community, I've been a Rotarian. I'm a member of the Rotary Club in town. I'm also have been on many boards and commissions in the county, including the most recent president of the election board that saw us through a pretty tumultuous 2022 locally, where we really had to work hard to make sure poll workers were properly funded, to make sure that our polls were staffed, and to move forward on hopefully creating more opportunities for voters by way of the vote centers that are being developed by the current election board. But a jack of all trades, and hopefully someone who can bring that knowledge and expertise to the decision making of county council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I love this question because I think it's the things that we've seen and that we do and we intend to do that make up a great deal of our qualifications. The first thing I'll say is I'm a listener. I teach communication, and one of the things that we know about that is active listening, and people listening is a huge part of what they do. It's why when you see my yard signs, you'll see our friend on that. I want everyone to know they can come to me for that. Beyond that, my work at the federal level, I served for a member of Congress during Barron Hill during a time of healthcare reform. I saw the difficulties of that legislation and the difficulties of doing the hard things. I've served as an agency head for the state of Indiana, literally a bipartisan agency head, where a Democrat or Republican had to negotiate on everything to get anything done. I did that job, and I hope that folks remember in that office that I did it well. Beyond that, in the last few years, when I first ran for this office in 2020 in the election, I did not foresee the pandemic that we went through in the last 4 years. In that time, I think every local official learned about keeping our communities running, making things happen, getting results in extraordinary circumstances. We don't know what the challenges are in the next 4 years. This job is one of those things where you don't exactly plan everything. Some things come to you and you must react. And I'm a constant worker to that end to get those things done with my colleagues, whether it's city, township, you name it, or our local not-for-profit community, which is a large part of what you do in these jobs.
As far as qualifications go, I'm a civically engaged individual. I watch city council meetings, I watch county council meetings, I try to stay involved, meet people, keep informed with the issues in town. I've also served on the Bloomington Environmental Commission for now going on 8 years. I have to agree, though, that budget experience or even government experience really isn't required to be qualified for a job such as this one. It matters that you care deeply about the community that you live in and that you want to support everyone that you can. I also think representation matters. I'm running to put the working class representation on this council. So I look forward to working with everybody.
We'll move to you, Cheryl.
I think I might be the most elected person among this august body. I served 16 years, that's 4 terms, on the Indian Creek Township Board, which is a small entity, but it operates very much like the county council in that we were responsible for the budget and for adopting the tax levy and rates. And this really prepared me for the county council. I also worked, like many of you, as a volunteer in our community. I did diverse experience from PTO to 4-H to Girl Scouts to Planned Parenthood. Just put me in touch with the people of this community and all parts of it, really. This was how I learned to listen to what people wanted from their government. First, I did this in the township, and then I could do this in the county. I also served on the county's Historic Preservation Board, which I chaired for about 10 years, and the County Plan Review Committee, which sees all the proposed projects that go before the Plan Commission. In that, I learned to listen and to hear ideas that are not just the standard ideas that people talk about in county government. And I learned what people are concerned about. That's the most important part of my experience.
Thank you. This next audience question is, what do you think is a better use of taxpayer funds and why? The first option is mental health care and addiction treatment, and the second option is a new jail. And Trent, we will start with you.
Well, I'm probably going to anger the person that answered the question, but I'm going to answer honestly from my experience. We have to literally do both. We do not have an option to take either of those issues and say, oh, I don't think that's it. And I say that respectfully, and I want to be candid about it. I also will always say, while I'm not knocking any present candidates or really anyone at all, but there's never one single plan on how these things go. There's folks around a table trying to figure out a problem and then make things happen to fit that. In fact, people coming in all with just one plan and not compromising is how we've ended up in some of the messes that we have. We do need to care for the behavioral health, mental health care for our residents best we can. Unfortunately, we have not been given a lot to work with from state resources to that level. I think we need some outside help. And while the state has been somewhat more helpful in recent years, this is a massive issue that needs a lot more resource and attention than a county can do on its own. It will need some partners. We also need a jail that treats people with dignity and recognizes them for the life that they have and the promise that will yet come. And that's just simply put, we have to do both of those things. And what's more, we have to do them exceedingly well. And so I think that's part of our mandate and our mission as we move forward.
Thank you. Matt, we'll hear from you next.
Okay, I can't help but agree that we have to prioritize both issues. We can never lose sight of the upstream solutions to help people from coming into contact with the justice system in the first place. However, if forced to choose one of the two, I think we need a new jail. This is mostly because there are already tons of residents and employees that work in the current justice building, and it is a sick building. We need to get people to a place where they can have a constitutional level of care. We need employees to not have to worry about their health while they report to work. While it is extremely important that we deal with issues like mental health, substance use challenges, anything that can help keep people out of correctional facilities, I think it's important that we build a new jail as soon as we can. The current one no longer serves the community. Thank you.
Cheryl, we'll come to you.
Everybody has said this. We have to do both. And first of all, we have a statutory responsibility to provide a jail. And of course, it must be a constitutional jail in terms of what is provided to the people who live there. We have also understanding that mental health and substance use problems are what has led us to have a jail that has more residents than we would like to have. And so we have discussed having mental health and substance use disorder treatment provided in the community before people enter the legal system. And this would be the best of all possibilities. But don't despair that we can't do both. We can't do them as well as we all would like to do them, but your county council is used to juggling. And every year we juggle all the services that we provide. And no, we don't do it perfectly, but we do it well, and we continue to refine how we do things. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would just echo everyone's sentiment that this is a both-end issue. We have to both address our mental health challenges in the community as well as a failing jail. I think it's maybe to offer a different perspective, or a slightly different perspective. We really can't know where we're going on the jail until we know where we've been. Paraphrasing Maya Angelou on this one. And what I mean by that is we, as a community, have to have a memory about why we have the jail we have to begin with. It was also built as a result of a lawsuit in 1981 when inmates had sued the county on their civil liberties and civil rights issues. We're in the building where those archives are kept. It's worth reading the Herald Times going back sometimes to learn that. But we are already dealing with a facility that at its inception had 124 beds that were filled immediately and was built in a way that we haven't been able to expand it. So we've had this conversation twice really in my lifetime, though I was very young when that happened before. And so I think one of the things we have to acknowledge too when the jail was opened in 1986 is that we used to have a mental health system in the United States. And since that time, that has fallen apart and has fallen on the jail to be that de facto mental health condition or system in our community. All of that is unacceptable. So we have obsolete technology in our jail, obsolete thinking about how we approach these issues. But as a party that supports restorative justice, we need to make sure that the incarceration of individuals is the last step along a long path of diversion and mental health treatment and care. And the last thing I'll say on this is that as a former public health employee in this county, we have a whole department set up to help do those things. We need to make sure those grants are there to get the job done. Thanks.
Thank you. This next question follows on the conversation of a new jail. And the question is, how might the corrections category of local income tax factor into funding a new jail? And Cheryl, we'll start with you.
Local income tax is something that is a concern to me because of the question that hasn't been much discussed lately, but it's prominent in the newspaper because there's a legal case being heard, and that's the question of annexation of a major chunk of Monroe County. These are areas 1A and 1B. And if that area is taken into the city, we will have much less local income tax available for use by the county. It makes it very difficult to plan when this legal case is sitting on the bar. We have other resources for financing the jail, and that includes bonding for construction, and bonding is not new to us. We pay off and add new bonds almost every year for major undertakings by the county. We have both a correctional tax and the local income tax for funding. And we have, in addition, the public safety local income tax. That's not a large chunk of money, but it's certainly helpful and has been used to support the jail and sheriff's department in the last several years.
I'll pick up on what Cheryl's talking about the limited resources. It's not even that we have the lit, it's that we have a cap from the state as to how much we can tax in a community, and we have to work that out with our city partners in terms of what the income tax works in our community and how we leverage it. I want to talk a little bit about the bond rating because that's really important. That's our county's credit card, and we have a pretty good credit score when it comes to our bond, a AA rating from recent reporting at the beginning of March, which means there are investors that want to do business in our county and invest in those bonds. They know we're good for money on it, and that is really, I think, think, the first step. Second step is going to be that as the commission decides where and how we're going to build that facility, is we need to sell off some property that we're not using, right? And if we're not using Thompson PUD downtown, that's an ample opportunity for housing in the downtown core. So we need to divest ourselves of some properties to help pay for the new facility as well. But I do want to pick up on the bond issue, going back in history here a little bit about how we got our last jail. Much like we're handling the convention center right now with the Capital Improvement Board, that is the holding organization for how we're going about building that facility, so too is our jail built in 1986 by a holding organization that held the bond to get the job done. And one thing I know for sure is that none of us that are running for office, city or county commission or county council, are civil engineers. I know we need to get shovels in the ground. I know we need a solution, but our predecessors, like Commissioner Zitlow, knew to form a holding organization to get the jail done. And I'll just say this, if we don't have the bonds in place and the sales in place by January, I would be very interested in seeing a holding organization get the job done on the jail. Thanks.
Well, I think you've heard a variety of approaches from all the folks up here on how this could be funded. And one thing I'd encourage folks to do, if you've never done it, is to either come to the Nat U Hill where the county council meets on Tuesdays at 5 o'clock. About every other Tuesday, you can find our schedule online. And come watch or join us via Zoom and or watch via CATS, which you might be watching this via, and watch how we work, because when we work, we do problem solving live and on TV. You will literally see us looking at, well, here is this asset that we have. You can transfer this, and as David was saying, the state does limit what you can do, but we can take a look at it. One thing that I want to be very clear on is you will hear a lot of discussions in this campaign about affordability of the community. We have to be exceedingly cautious about not going the other way in our own direction in drawing excessive amounts of dollars from residents who are already feeling the pinch of larger economic factors. It is hard to afford to live here compared to how it used to be, right? And so we've got to always be thinking about being very, I don't like the word thrifty, but very detailed and exceedingly tender to the needs of all residents about new revenues introduced. That's not something that I think any of us should ever do lightly, nor an approach that we can afford to do that way.
All right, so I think it's evident that a new jail is going to be expensive, but there are still a lot of factors that determine just how expensive it will be. I believe that if just a single-story jail as recommended is built in the downtown area, it does not have to be a tremendously expensive project in comparison to, say, an enormous complex with more services added, with everything for the court, or the offices, all of that. There's a big difference between trying to fund, say, $70 million and $150 million. And that sort of thing will kind of determine what mechanisms we should use in order to find funding. I agree with the others that we have to be very careful. We don't want to overtax the community, but I think if this is done responsibly and not in a sprawling, enormous sort of fashion, because public conversations need to happen about the number of beds, about the actual footprint required to build this facility. If it is reasonable in the way that I believe it should be, I think it's entirely possible that no new tax will be required. It is my understanding that the city's economic development, local income tax could also help pay for this project. So we need to find a way to fund it, but we need a lot more information first. Thank you.
Thank you. And Matt, I apologize. I should have allowed you to answer that question first, out of the order, but I will allow you to answer this question first, and then we will come back down the line. What is the first thing you would do to improve access to housing?
Okay. Housing feels like it has been for a long time one of the biggest issues in the community, and probably, to be honest, always will be. In March of 2020, 4 candidates sat on this stage for this county council at-large seat, and they spoke about the importance of increasing housing stock and trying to control costs. I know this isn't something that can be solved overnight, but we need to actually collectively prioritize it now so that by the time 4 years from now we're talking about it again, it won't be an even larger crisis than at the time that we first address it. I think probably, quite frankly, we need a dramatic increase in housing stock. It's basic economics of supply and demand. Until we have enough units to house the people who would like to live in this community, it is going to be easy to charge too much for the scarce resources that we do have for the housing we already have. I look forward to the opportunity to talk to other stakeholders, to talk to residents, and to collaborate with commissioners and other officials, and find ways we can make a change on this as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Housing. I've been talking about this at every forum, and I talk about this from the standpoint of my position on the Monroe County Plan Commission. But housing issues are not just the counties, they are also the cities. And luckily, we all heard about the Sudbury development and 4,000 plus new residences being built within the next 6 years, I believe. That will be a major investment and help greatly. These are not student apartments. These are residences and multifamily residents as well. The Plan Commission is a body that doesn't just review proposed projects. It also actually plans for the future. And that work is ongoing now with the comprehensive development ordinance that is in draft form. I have asked to help us improve this ordinance by preparing a dashboard of current housing availability and locations where housing can be built. Whoops, darn, the dashboard.
So adding to some of what's been said on stage, I think it's important that we remember that the pathway to affordable housing is also through incomes that can afford housing. And so there are opportunities where the county council can go with open arms to the next commission, however our community reassembles it, and says, we are trying to get to yes on a lot of these issues. You know, we have parcels in the county through Planning Commission that have been identified as long as I've lived here for potential development, but we may need to start to foster some of that development. A lot of developers will do the in-ground work to build the infrastructure to connect on to the infrastructure in our community if we were able to open those spaces up. But for those that are a little harder, that the elevations and the topography are a challenge, this is where county council can say, look, we can do tax increment financing to improve lift stations and infrastructure to get people connected or properties connected. We can do tax abatements where we know that the cost benefit of getting those high-paying jobs in the community will help raise some of that revenue without raising the taxes on the community that's already here. But we have to think about the intersection of those behaviors between housing and economic opportunity for employees. And the second thing I'd like to say on that in the 30 seconds I have is, as we have stifled some of that development city and county. What that means is that our current population can't really move from property to property. If you manage to buy a starter home, you might still be in it, and you're not moving along your ladder to free up that space for that person to buy their first home, or to get into that housing that might be stable housing that is paid for by an NGO that's already leading on these efforts of housing affordability in our community. And so this is a very complex problem for 90 seconds, but that's my insight on it.
I have said this more than a few times, and I'll add it here because I think it's important that it be repeated. My family and the home that they bought in the 1970s in Van Buren Addition, if they were buying it today, I don't believe they'd be able to afford to do so. That's the family I came from. The family that I now have with my wife Kyla, our two girls, I don't believe that house that I bought in 2007, I would currently be able to afford that house under today's present conditions. What's this tell me? It tells me that we have a good headache, that people want to be here. It tells me that people cannot be here. And as a teacher at the Kelly School, I see, about 100 undergraduate students walk through my classrooms. If Indiana were smart, we'd try to grab at least a few of them and keep them here, not giant sucking sound, send them away, but that's what we do. Now, when it comes to the county council, I'm going to be real frank with folks. It's not the county council that's preventing housing from being developed in any of our community, and I think a serious look has to be given to decisions that have been made in the last few years about developments that would have helped, developments that would have enhanced, and I think sometimes that's coming from the commissioner and planning commission level. The county council does not block those things, but we need to bring people here. It's going to take more than county councilors making that articulation to get that done. And I just want to be direct and frank about that because it's a realistic issue that we are really faced with.
Thank you. This next question is, as county councilor, how would you support women and marginalized genders? And David, we'll start with you.
I'd like to focus my answer on just the county workforce itself. We have a county workforce that right now, if a woman becomes pregnant, does not have maternity leave in our county government. I think this is just appalling that we've been, as a party, talking about paid parental leave since Bill Clinton's administration in 1992, but it's something we need to think about in our community. I think we need to think about the fact that we have women and families that are working in government that, in county level, that we do not have great access to child care. We have some one-offs from ARPA funding that the Commission's been able to work out, which is great, but a long-term solution for child care for our workforce, so those working families and those moms can take care of their kids, is really vital. Those are the things that County Council can work on, because after all, it is the body that works on the HR policy of our county and figuring out the pay bands and benefits packages that we can offer. And so while I know it's been customary to work with a firm to develop some of those HR policies, we may need some different thinking on here and to also listen to the commissions that our county has set up to address these issues. We have a women's commission. It works on these issues. And maybe counties should think about funding some of the, or staffing those commissions so that they can produce the same level of quality of work that our city partners do in the City of Bloomington's commission work. So I know that's a very specific question for our county employees, but I think it's a vital one as we understand our roles up here and how we support women and, of course, the disparate impact on women of color in our community that feel that burden more largely in our county government. Thanks.
I love this question because I'll offer this, and I've said this for some time. I love this community. This community has been exceedingly good to me, to my family. I love it. I hope it's a place my daughters can come back to if they choose, although I won't make them. They get to make that choice. And sort of to that end, I think that people like me and others always need to be taking points of privilege that we have in the community. And I recognize every day I'm a white, straight, 9-generation family townie in this community, and absolutely say to ourselves, what are we doing to make sure that others are getting the things that you see, appreciate, and know and experience? And I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what David said about our commissions. We have numerous strong commissions in the county. We as a council don't have the ability to go in, nor do commissioners to go in and constantly monitor and support and assist what those commissions do. What we need to do is empower them. And that probably means line items that fund that, giving them the autonomy. A women's commissioner told me the other day that someone in county employment said, this is not how we do business. I don't know why we would talk like that. No one talking like that in government should be talking like that, particularly when we serve the people. I think we have to change some attitudes about how those things happen, how we interact with individuals, because that's the first step in reaching out to our marginalized communities.
Okay, I appreciate this question because this is an area that I'm excited to learn more about. You know, as someone who hasn't been on the council yet, I don't know some of the specific ways that the council can support women or marginalized genders. I do agree with what's been said before about we need to empower some of the structures we do already have, and actually I would like to use any position that I have to amplify the voices of elected officials, appointed officials, and county employees who are women or are of marginalized genders, so that I can learn directly from them what I can do to best support from this role. Thank you.
Cheryl?
We have lost county employees due to the child care situation. And the salaries that we pay are barely enough to cover housing, food, and child care. And one of my goals, still long unfulfilled, has been for the county to explore and develop child care facilities for our employees. It would make all the difference in the world in the quality of their life, the quality of their work for the county. And this is something that we have very little of in our community. Indiana University has a child care facility, but the hospital used to, but we do not have good models of this in our community. We don't have good models in the state either, but other states do have models, and they provide funding for local governments to develop child care. I worked with Commissioner Githens to identify a child care facility as part of a project that is leading to Habitat housing on the south side of Bloomington, and I'm very excited about this. I learned a great deal about child care, and it's not just facilities, it is also personnel.
Thank you. Before our next question, I just want to remind our audience members that we are collecting questions. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask, you can raise your hand and Sue will bring you a card and we will collect them. So on the topic of existing structures, this next question is, which advisory boards or commissions should be bolstered and why? And Trent, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm going to make somebody mad. I think we probably need more people doing more things than less, and so I don't want to leave one out and not say we bolster it. One thing I'll say is I want to mention Council Member Peter Iverson in the audience. He has worked hard to make sure the Environmental Commission is back to revitalization. We have experts in this community. That's a beautiful thing to have. We have expertise on things like the Environmental Commission. We should be bolstering their work. But at the same time, you can't ignore other commissions like the Environmental Commission or the Women's Commission. We need to bolster that voice as well. The other one I want to mention, we did have an affordable housing task force / commission that met up until a couple years ago, and my understanding is the commissioners did not renew the charge on that. It had been an initiative under former Commissioner Amanda Barge, and it had left eventually after her departure from office. I don't understand why that was not reauthorized by the commissioners, but we need more hands on those things than less. And then here's the second part to this. We need to listen to these commissions that are willing to serve. It is hard to get people to serve. The last thing we need to do is make that service any harder. So if you have experts who have willingly given their time for often no pay and no thanks, you should listen to them and honor that work. Otherwise, don't create commissions, and I believe you need to have those things in place.
Yeah, I completely agree that we need to give the microphones to these boards and commissions. We have people who care deeply about the community and want to improve it and have expertise in one field or another, and are giving us their time and energy in order to let us, sometimes identifying problems, sometimes identifying solutions. We need to empower these individuals to continue to help us, because I completely agree with Trent. We always need more hands on deck. I think especially as we move forwards, it would be important for land use and environment to get maybe some extra attention. We have to kind of find a way to build more densely if we want to solve problems like the housing crisis that has dominated these discussions for good reason. I know a lot of times this is just in an advisory capacity, but I want to hear the voices of the members of these boards and commissions so we can try to make progress on this issue. Thank you.
I served as chair of one of the county's commissions. That's for historic preservation. And the key there was that we had a work plan. And we did report to the commissioners, and we gave recommendations. And that commission is still operating very much in the same way. Other commissions have less interface between with the commissioners and in particular the council. And I think we need to charge our commissions with setting out their work plan, putting it on the county website, recruiting more members, and annually giving us their recommendations and telling us about their next steps. We have such a wealth of talent in our community. We need to foster it and hear more from it. And I don't want to pick up on any particular commission, but I do want to say the Environmental Commission has come closest to having developed a plan, and this relates to climate change. I attended a workshop organized by the Environmental Commission, and that really was a great source of information, and it's going to be something that has lasting power for our community.
I'd like to talk about two boards or commissions in specific. I was a member of the Affordable Housing Advisory Commission a few years ago, and I did leave right before it was disbanded. But in one of our outputs of that organization was a list of shovel-ready ideas that we could have done under ARPA to create a equivalent of the HAND organization for the county, to think about direct payment to help some people in getting into those affordability situations. And those recommendations were not acted upon. And it was a frustration point to put a year's worth of work into something and then it just kind of sits there. Now, having said that, I know that in that case, some of those board members moved on to heading home, and some other organizations in the community working hard on getting folks housed. But nonetheless, yeah, I think listening to the outputs of these commissions where we've asked experts to serve and give us their expertise is vital. I'm also the former president of our election board, and having had that burden and responsibility over the past year was a challenge, because I was working with staff that didn't have the capacity to support the board and do the work of voter registration and run our elections. This is 24 years since Bush v. Gore. Election law is a lot harder than it used to be. Highly legalistic, highly technical, and now under threat not just from an opposition party, but also from foreign threats and abroad trying to hack elections. This is highly sophisticated work. It requires funding staff to support very critical boards and commissions in our community. The election board is just one of them. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next question is, what are the arguments against expansion of the convention center? And Matt, we will start with you whenever you're ready.
Arguments against. Okay, I believe, from the conversations I've had, I've mostly heard support, but I guess arguments against could be that it would be a poor use of our dollars. I've heard arguments that, yeah, mostly that actually, that that a lot of people don't believe that there is enough value in that project. Most of my conversations have involved being told the exact opposite, that it is going to help sustain our community, help us grow, that if done correctly, it can also be used as a civic center, so it isn't just dependent on groups from out of town and conventions. Another, I guess, possible argument against could be land use. There are some who would say if you're going to make it too big or in the wrong place, that there could be better uses for that land. That's something that I'm interested in learning more about. But no, that's all I've got. Thank you.
The only thing that I've really heard is that the expanded convention center won't serve many of the residents of Monroe County. They don't go downtown to eat. They don't shop downtown. And that just goes against what I hear so much from other people. They want to have the restaurants expand downtown, want to have the retail stores expand downtown, because those are providing jobs that people want. The Civic Center concept is one that was there by design from the very beginning. I was on the initial planning committee for the expansion project, and the Civic Center is by design because we've run out of room to host a number of community-wide events. We can't fit them into the convention center. The opportunity to have income coming into Monroe County and the city of Bloomington from people who live elsewhere is wonderful. We are going to benefit greatly from the economic development brought by the expansion. And this won't reach everybody, but it will raise the ship of economic development for the county and the city as a whole.
There's a lot of reasons not to build a convention center. After all, we're probably going to have to put a bond out on a jail or a criminal justice facility, and it seems like for some, we might be racking up the county's credit card on 2 massive projects in the next 4 years that could hit $250 million in spending. I've heard that argument. I've heard that the return on investment isn't there. That how many big box buildings can we build in the downtown core with glass structures, sort of a crystal canyon running between here and a Seminary Square? Would that make a lot of sense? I've heard that we don't have the traffic or foot traffic for it, that people don't want to travel from Indianapolis and come to a different convention center 50 miles away, because if you're a conventioner, Indianapolis has everything you need. And I disagree with most of that. I also disagree with the idea that in a post-COVID world that people aren't going to conventions. In my career as a government consultant, I've been to over 40 convention centers in my life, large, small, places I don't even remember being, like Denver for a few days, and then places like Annapolis that built into their structures in their community, brick and mortar looking convention centers that you wouldn't know where the city starts and the convention center begins. We have to get creative with this solution. I think the CIB has open ears. Mr. Weikart, Ms. Poling, and others have opened their ears to what our convention center should look like, a Bloomington and a Monroe County answer to that question. And yeah, it does serve our community too. We can do a lot of events in the auditorium. We're here a lot for stuff in the MCPL, but if you want to get north of 200 people in a room like this, we need some different forums and some opportunities to serve not just those visiting our community Monday through Thursday to spend money downtown and keep those 6 businesses in business on the square still, but also for ourselves too. Thanks.
So arguments against, I have some friends that have made these points to me before. I think what the argument is do we really know that this is going to be the thing that does anything to help with workforce, bring money into the community, and to support it? And while I understand those arguments, I've been a pretty consistent booster for expanding the convention center. I think back to the current facility. When I was a kid, it was a Ford dealership that my dad bought his Ranger truck at. And I remember when it changed and turned into the present convention center. And much like most things in this community, it, like this library, has not necessarily grown with the times. The population of our community has nearly doubled in my lifetime since being born in 1977. There are just simply put more people here. There are more demands on everything. And there's a good headache that we have, and that's people want to be here. They really want to be here. Many Southern Indiana communities don't necessarily have that. I'll also say this. I have some anecdotal evidence on this. When I was right out of school, I worked at the Westin Hotel as a waiter. I battled down 2 evictions and multiple problems I had. And one of the ways I did that was the convention traffic that came through Indianapolis for Do It Best and Comic-Con and all the things that people go to. And they came there and they literally paid my bills and helped me through those times. I see this as a boost to the core, and we need that for the good of the county.
Cheryl, earlier you ran out of time to talk about the dashboard, but an audience member you've piqued their interest. So they've said, we don't know how many units in an apartment complex are occupied. We need a census to find out. What would the dashboard that Cheryl mentioned provide?
So this is with the County Plan Commission, and we don't have many apartment units. I'm talking about residential lots. And we need to know where the residential lots are, how many, what sort of limitations the Plan Commission zoning has placed on these particular tracts of land, and how many lots we really need. This is something that we don't have good data on, and I'm sort of a geeky person. I want to know. I want information. So this will be forthcoming, and it won't be a secret document. Of course, it'll be shared with people. But in addition to the dashboard, another concept I have recommended is a residential development overlay. In county planning, we have a protective overlay for the Lake Monroe watershed. And I think this is a very wise overlay. We also can have an overlay that fosters residential development. We additionally already have an overlay for business development. And I think that's wise too. But these overlays allow people to see quickly where they can put their projects and not have constraints placed on them.
So the initial question was, how do we get at the number of occupancy? Is that?
Yes, and,
Yeah.
and what the dashboard would provide.
Yeah, and so I think as Cheryl said, this is one of those cases where we're talking about county units versus what goes on in the city, and that's really the conversation of leadership to say we need to work with our city partners to get a real comprehensive understanding of how many, what is the occupancy rate. Now, of course, the occupancy rate on some of the larger housing developments that have gone in for student housing is hard to get at because those corporations don't want to tell us, right, what their occupancy rates are. I had someone tell me recently that if you just hung out at Miller Showers in the evening and at night and looked at certain buildings to see how many lights were on in the apartment buildings, you'd get a sense of that number and could count how many windows aren't lit up with lights at night, right? But it's a hard number to get at. But what it also says is that for certain housing, we may be approaching overbuild. And the reason for that, of course, is that our partners at IU have not built student housing in some time and have put that burden out into the community. It's a very complex problem within city limits. County-wise, though, the CDO or the County Development Ordinance has identified places for build. I live on the west side of the county in Van Buren Township, and Whitehall Crossing is one of those locations that has been identified for new footprints and new housing with the incoming industries for microchip construction or building going in off Whitehall. There's a golden opportunity for us to increase some of that stock. So I think overlay where we can build that's not sitting on a karst location, that's not in a floodplain or watershed, and we're getting closer to an idea of what those parcels are for development. As for the city stuff, boy, do we need to work on that. Thanks.
One of the things that I would do is, and this is a lot of what happens on council, I'll either take an idea that Cheryl Munson or another colleague has and try to help to make it better. And one of the things I'd add to Cheryl's dashboard is information for those actually looking to engage the system to know what they can do on their land, their property, or as they build, or as they do business. There's a giant mystery around those processes. And I recently in December, I lost my father and came into taking care of some land for our family that's been in the family since the late 60s. One of the things I attempted to do on this county piece of property is figure out what we can, should not, need to, must think about doing related to it. And I have to say that it was a massive struggle. I've engaged a few other people to assist me on that, and it's not always clear. And that's not good. When the at-large member of the Monroe County Council, the president of the council, cannot figure out what to do with one's own parcel. Now, granted, I'm not maybe the sharpest mind for the process, but every mind should be able to engage that, know what they can do, and be able to do it with confidence. And it's a shame that that can't happen. Now, I'm not blaming anyone for that, but we as elected officials need to go in there and hardcore say, hey, look, this needs to be clear. Let's translate outwardly, not inwardly when we talk. Sorry, did I go over? I'm sorry.
So in my experience, when I hear questions about how many of the apartments are actually vacant, I get it. I'm curious about that too, and I have not been able to find that information. But I think most of the times that this comes up is when people are trying to convince me that there is not a need for more housing units in the county, and I just can't help but disagree with that. It may be that we need a greater variety of housing. When people speak to density, which I think is really important, we need to develop more densely where appropriate. There are obviously some areas where we can't and some areas where we shouldn't. But I think a lot of people view things in the context of there is either a single-family home or there is a high-rise apartment. In reality, there is an enormous segment of housing that can be done in between called missing middle housing. Everything from duplexes to condos and townhouses and courtyard structures. We need to look at how we can get more units in the county, but units that are both desired by broad demographics and that have smaller footprints and still allow us to achieve density. So this is the type of stuff that I'm really interested in learning more about and seeing if we can help create within our county to help our residents. Thank you.
Our next question is, what is the council's role in annexation and what is your position on it? We're going to start with David.
I am the only candidate that is being annexed into the city. I live in Van Buren Township, Van Buren Park. This is a very hard conversation for my neighborhood, where I live in a community where those that have retired from Crane and are on Social Security are trying to figure out how they're going to pay increases in taxes coming into city limits. This is a very hard conversation for our community and our party specifically because we have no position on it. And it's put Democrats against Democrats and created needless conflict within our own party about who's in the city and who's not. It's created tensions where people are called freeloaders on NPR and public radio in our community, and they're our friends and neighbors. This is a highly divisive issue. And a lot of it's going to be settled in the courts in this cycle. But what does it mean for council? Well, I think Cheryl touched on it already. We're looking at a revenue loss. That's the general obligations fund that the county uses to pay for things like the public health care in our community and paying for things like supporting our criminal justice system and our public defenders, that we will have to do less with less in those spaces. We're going to have to figure out where that revenue comes from. And if we do not attract new businesses to our community and we do not have more housing choices being built where we can share in that tax burden is falling on those of us that live here. And that is going to be outside city limits. So what council has to deal with is the aftermath of what the budget's going to look like in a post-annexation space. But we do need empathy, and we do need hearing one another, that we do understand that the city will grow and continue to grow as it has since 1818, and work really hard to make sure that when we have to see annexation in our state, that we have those conversations with friends and neighbors and we make it clear how that works.
The council specifically is on the receiving end of a set of lost revenue, and I believe our estimates are about $1 to $2 million annually, maybe a little bit more, perhaps a little bit less, depending. And so what that means is for the current services that we provide, we either new revenues coming from somewhere, we're figuring it out, or recycling more cans or doing something. We are doing that to figure out how we continue to maintain existing services, and what's more, the demand on us in public services, services don't go back. Things continue to expand. New needs will occur. And so, you know, the minute we walk out of the door today, or even talking with some of you, there will be new services or new needs identified that we'll need to respond to in coming budget years. So we will respond to that. We'll have to disseminate information to taxpayers as best as possible. And I want to speak to that with the remainder of my time, because it's not lost on me in any of this that the state has set up a very difficult situation for us. And I've said to a number of our legislators more than a few times, if a mayor or a council, city council, or any entity wants to do annexation, they should be able to pursue it. What should happen is they should propose an area, and then the voters of that area be able to vote on that in the next election, literally the next fall, not a primary or something odd like that or some strange special election. They should be able to vote on it. And if they make a prevailing case, up or down, those citizens theoretically, right, they'd vote for it. That's what we need. Instead, the state has pitted us against each other. Now we will have to figure that out, and we will, but it's a mess, and it shouldn't be that way.
Okay, annexation is obviously a really difficult issue, a really sensitive issue. Lots of people have different opinions on what should happen and where. I think each area should be treated differently. You can't treat, say, an island within already existing city the same way as an area that might be adjacent to a city and maybe a little less urban in some situations. As others have mentioned, the main way that this affects the council is that there will be less money available for the council to use. And I see that as a great difficulty, because I think one of the biggest hurdles for the county council is finding a way to better pay their employees. And if there is less money in the pot, I understand it will be difficult to do so. That being said, there are a number of areas that I think annexation makes all the sense in the world, that the city extended services under the agreement that area would then become part of the city, and the state legislature has wiped that out. So I would like to take it on a case-by-case basis, but looking at it as, as the city has looked at it, as much as it impacts this body, I don't think I can just oppose annexation. I think in many cases it's necessary. Thank you.
All right, Cheryl.
Annexation is a big worry, not just for the people who are about to be annexed or may be annexed, but for all taxpayers in the county, because we will still have the budgetary needs of funding services, but with less money. We also can't just go out as a council and raise taxes to help cover the loss. We are limited by state government into having a growth quotient for our budgets and for our levy, and the levy decides the tax rate. We usually come in around 4%, and we've managed to do this without raising taxes because property values have also risen, and that allows us to have a fairly stable base of finances. But I want people who live in the city to realize that their county income taxes may also rise some to cover the annexation gap, because they are residents of the county. So while the city government will increase the amount of revenue they get because of annexation, the city residents will end up paying more. And this is something that's not well understood by the residents of the city.
Thank you. One audience member said that with 2 children under 4, they pay over $20,000 a year for childcare. Their question is there a way the council could reduce the cost of childcare? And Trent, we will start with you when you're ready.
If I had an immediate answer on that, we would be doing it immediately. Yes. Because I absolutely feel that. My daughters are now 12 and 9, and I get it. A lot of us were schooled up on the old school. You've got to start saving for their college, the minute you leave the hospital, and then some. And I was talking about this with my wife one time, and she said, college? No, it's not college we have to worry about. It's the child care. It's going to cost us, Trent, as much as college ever will. And by the time we get to college, we'll be hopefully better off with our jobs. And I sat down with some workers at Cook once and talked to them about that, and the head nodding was so severe I thought it was going to split a table in two. This is a massive problem in our community. One of the things the county is currently not built for with our funding mechanisms and resources is to open child care centers. I do think, however, that a mix in the future of partnerships with the city, the county, perhaps even our townships — I know we have township officials here — and even our private sector are going to have to look hard at this. We have been, as we could with ARPA dollars, offering some solutions around the edges of this, but it is a massive burden to our folks. And as a family member of mine said very candidly once, it makes more sense for me not to be working, because to go to work and pay for childcare actually becomes a loss for everybody, and we really should not have that.
Okay, I'm glad this question was asked, because it is an incredibly important issue that affects just about everybody, especially obviously those with kids. However, if the president of the council does not know a way in which the council can fix this issue, I, as a newcomer, definitely also do not. This is something, though, that I really do look forward to continuing to speak not only with residents about, but also with any experts on the subject matter, with any relevant stakeholders that I can find. I'd like to try to find a way to ease this burden, because the costs are way too high, and as has been mentioned, it can put people in a very difficult position with what choices they should make in terms of employment, mobility, all sorts of things. So it's something we definitely need to look at. Thank you.
I have been concerned about the child care issue for over 50 years. Now, that'll tell you how old I am. But having gone through the child care challenge myself, I think it was better 50 years ago than it is now. And I'm really sorry to come to that conclusion. There were more churches, there were more centers. There was a greater problem, though, and that was quality control. And the businesses and some of the organizations worked this out to have inspections and review of the quality of and the healthfulness of some of the places, especially child care homes. We haven't solved this because nobody has absolutely said it must be solved. The businesses, which in other parts of the world fund child care for their employees, don't feel they need to do this because they have enough employees. When they are impacted, that is when we're going to see a change. And it's possible we could get our state legislature to help us. I would hope so. Thank you.
This is incredibly complex, and I would maybe offer some perspective here to say that this is an issue where having positive leadership in our county council, in our county commission, in our NGOs, in our community, coming together in a task force model probably makes the best sense on how we move forward, because it's not going to be just a county government solution. It's not going to be just a city government solution. This is a all hands on deck solution. And what I mean by that is this, let me throw some numbers out there. To be in the top 20% of wage earners in Monroe County, you have to earn $90,000 a year or more. If you're saying $20,000 a year is going into just the child care, let alone the rent and food and everything else, I mean, it tells you that 80% of our community is drowning in this. And to be doing well enough that, hey, I'm in the top 20% of wage earners and I still can't make this happen, tells me we have, it's more than a crisis at this point. But another way county council can get to it, aside from task forcing and leadership and getting a lot of smart people in a room and working with the NGOs that already lead on these issues and finding some solutions to the problem, is thinking about the wage question, right? If we have improved wages in the community where people can have those higher paying jobs in the community, we can start to raise those boats. It also might mean when we look at tax abatements and things for new businesses coming into the community, we may want to ask them what their child care situation is when they move in. It may not be enough to say, well, I'm glad you're here and you're providing a few hundred jobs at $100,000 a year, but what are you doing for the workforce on top of that? I might have some questions about that. So there may be some levers we can get into, some questions we can get into, but it's going to take, no offense to us up here, a few more smarter people than us to gather up into a task force model to really figure out how to move that needle. But that's just one way to go at it.
Great. Following up on the mention of the state legislature, this next question is, what could the state legislature do to make your job easier? And Matt, we'll start with you.
I'm going to start with a non-incumbent on that one, huh? Okay. There's a lot of things I know that the state legislature has done that I'm not thrilled about, and there's probably even more than I know about. But one thing that makes life difficult for any governing body and any population, for that matter, is taking local control out of our hands. If the state legislature wants to make decisions, whether that's about things like annexation or otherwise just everyday issues, and say that we as the local body do not know best. We cannot choose what we're going to do in different regards, whether that's building in wetlands, building on steep slopes. There's a lot of ways in which they've exerted a little too much control over localities lately. I'm sure there are also plenty of opportunities for them to do good, but as of right now, the thing that jumps to mind to me is to stop making it harder for us to make decisions that we believe best suits our residents. Thank you.
Sure, we'll come down to you.
I think Mr. Cawley is absolutely right. The state legislature has decided they know more than those of us who live in Monroe County and deal with the problems of Monroe County. Certainly, managing building sites is one thing, but there is also school funding that is an issue, and it's been an issue forever. I don't know how we change it, but we don't have the kind of local control, and we're forced to pass referenda to increase public school budgets, and this is a major problem. We also lose revenue because students who go to private schools take their funding with them, and nobody would have designed a system like this had they sat down and thought about it, really and truly. But I'm ready to ask the state legislature for more. Help us with the child care problem. Give us independence over annexation. Let it be the people who live here who decide. Give us a chance to govern ourselves in the way that we know how to do it. Thank you.
Oh, there's so much, but I think the short answer is the State House needs to get out of our way. And the supermajority in Indianapolis, for the purported party of home rule, is not. And we have seen in our community, as long as I've lived here, incursions by our state legislature and decision-making in Bloomington. One of the issues I remember a few years ago was when our community worked to do the environmentally sound thing of banning or reducing the use of plastic bags in our stores by City Council, and the State House had a different opinion. When it comes to things like voucher programs, that the chairman of the Education Committee in the Indiana State House, who's a florist by profession, is making decisions about education policy in our state against the best interests of our school teachers, is absurd. But when it comes to our county council activities, the ability, capping our ability to raise revenue in certain ways because they know best up north. When it comes to issues of fiscal control in our community, those are huge challenges. But I'll say this, and I might be putting on a different hat right now, but I grew up in a state that had the very progressive idea that's 100 years old, that we can vote on ballot initiatives where citizens put issues on the ballot and we vote on them, that if we want to recall people like us because we're not doing a good job, we can do that, and we can have special elections to fill offices instead of a party chair of calling a caucus in January to do so. If we could just be as progressive as 100 years ago from our state house, I'd be very, very happy with that. But there are so many issues, but the fiscal control issues that sit on top of us locally, where we can't make good, sound decisions about how we tax and where we draw revenue, and is just another example of noodling and meddling in home rule that we deserve. Thanks.
I appreciate this question, and I'm going to actually use my time to speak pretty bluntly here if I can. I'll say this: I believe in government. I've worked at federal, state, and local levels. In fact, I was chief of staff for the Indiana House Democratic Caucus in the General Assembly, and did that up until 2017. I sometimes look at the legislature, the present legislature included, and with notable exemptions of some good folks that I know, I sometimes think life would be better if they just stopped meeting altogether. Just go home and save us money. First of all, one thing you can do to help the kids in my community is you can stop beating up on trans kids. And anything you do that attacks someone for which your privilege is allowing that and their position is not allowing them to respond, then you need to stop doing it. That's number one they could do. They could rein in our current Attorney General. I've been, as a faculty member, as a PhD student, I've been in numerous meetings this week. They're going to begin, I guess, censoring the language I use in the classroom, where I'm teaching students to think critically for our workforce. They're going to do that. And then here's the final thing that I'll say about them. There's a giant swooshing sound that is people leaving our state. It's not our community where they're living. They want to be here. We've talked about fixing that. But the legislature needs to take care of its own business, and that means taking care of its people. Anything not on that agenda, go home and stay home.
Thank you. Our next question is it important to bring BIPOC and other marginalized voices into financial decision-making? And if yes, how would you do this? Cheryl, we'll start with you.
I think BIPOC and all people should have a part of financial decision-making. And our process in the county council is very open, and I don't know if we're inviting, but we do invite the public to attend. All our budget hearings are on CATS. we welcome you in the Nat U Hill room to hear our decisions. And I want to advise everybody that the county council doesn't just make fiscal decisions during our budget sessions. We do this almost every meeting because there's a grant that comes in, or there's some proposed project, or a department is desperate to have a new employee, etc. All of this is available to you to participate in. And I have to tell you, we missed Jim Shelton on the county council. He was, through the Chamber of Commerce, a steadfast presence in the Nat U Hill room, and often spoke to the council about issues he thought were of concern. So please come see us. We also will need new county council members down the road. Not 4 years from now. Yes, 4 years from now, we will need council members. We need you. You need to join us in the work.
Well, I think it's important to say that everything that's been done is not enough, and it's a constant garden that we have to work on to get to a place where when I walk into even a room like this today, that we see more of the diversity of our community. And it's tricky because I think it kind of goes back to the convention center conversation in a bit. You know, this is where we do things in our community, at the MCPL Public Auditorium, on CATS TV, and yet this isn't where the whole community is. I think it's really important, and something I intend to do if elected, that the county council has to get out of the Nat U Hill room occasionally. We need to, and I know that there's some statutory things to say we have to do our business there, but at the same time, there is nothing that prevents field meetings for us to go into the corners of the community and meet people where they are, and we don't do that nearly enough. We just don't. You know, as a party, we've tried to do those things, but I've learned that the learning curve is a lot steeper than I thought it was. But it's the blind spots that we recognize we have, and we continue to work on those issues. Now, we're talking about a group that you have people running here to engage in taxation, and it's really hard to talk about 2.7% here and 1.3% there and not see the faces and communities behind the taxation we're taking. And so, you know, before we go and raise a single dollar of revenue for anything new, whether it's a convention center or a criminal justice facility, we need to definitely float and discuss these issues and bring in those voices from the community that will experience a disparate impact, not only from the taxation, but the likelihood that the people inhabiting that jail at the end of a long criminal justice case and court system may be people of color, and we still need to address those disparate impacts in those facilities that we are building and own. Thanks.
BIPOC members of the community belong at the table, and any table they wish to be at, and any table that it doesn't appear welcoming to them, barriers need to be removed. One of the things in the last 4 years I've had a real privilege to engage in off and on to different levels is a project from the Community Justice and Mediation Center, the Community Voices for Change. And the big thing on that initiative was to figure out how you get people to the table who are not at the table or have access to information, particularly around health in the community. This has currently led to a health equity council where we're getting more people to the table to talk about what's happening at IU Health, where could food deserts be, what does this look like? And during these meetings, the cool thing is you're going to have a member of the community, you're going to have a city council member, you're going to have a not-for-profit leader, and you have people in the room. And you would think that all of us talk all the time, and some of us try to talk all the time, but that does not happen. We have to have organizations and groups like this. I mean, at one time we would have thought that CATS alone, and we love CATS, and public comment alone was the great reform. I'll tell you, there's communities that don't do either of those. But tomorrow's work looks like community town halls, listening sessions, door-to-door, all those initiatives. I've even said for health needs, we need to go back to flyering. We're leaving you a flyer of resources at your door. Here are things you need to know about in case you can't get to a meeting.
I do not need 90 seconds to answer this question. Yes, we need the voices of people of color to be involved in any fiscal decision making. We need all voices to be involved in the fiscal decision making, or else we are doing them a disservice. Collectively, you know, we all need to listen and learn and do better. And even though this wasn't directly asked, I want to say it. Elected officials of color need to be treated equally and need to be treated with respect. That is something that, we're not talking about potential, we're not talking about future. That's something that needs to happen starting now. So, thank you.
Thank you. This next question will be a speed round, so you will have 30 seconds to answer this one. And the question is, what is one thing that distinguishes you from the other candidates on the stage?
I'm the only candidate with 2 first names on the ballot. And that's all I'm going to say.
Fair enough.
I don't know. I love these people. They're nice, great folks. I have our friend on our yard sign, and there's people told me, don't put that on your yard sign. Put issues, be edgier. That's not me. I do get edgy, as you've seen tonight or today. But I don't know. I like that motive and that people to know me as that.
I'm not going to be so naive as to suggest that anybody's life is really easy, that anybody earning any amount has it really easy, but my background of really struggling to get my footing here, to be paid $7.50 an hour while trying to pay rent, while trying to pay back loans, while living with 4 roommates, I've known hardship that most politicians don't, and I want to represent voices of people who I still know who are in this position, and try to help them with county government.
What I think distinguishes me is the depth of my experience in county government and in knowing the people of Monroe County. And that's important because I count on the people to tell me what issues are of great concern to them. And I think I'm a fairly easy to connect with person because my phone number, my email, my website are out there, and people do call me, and I'm very glad about that.
Okay, now we'll hear a 1-minute closing argument from all of you, and we will start with Matt and work in reverse order down.
Well, thank you to everyone who had a hand in putting this event together. It's so important to provide voters with an opportunity to learn more about their candidates. At-large races are unique in that you can choose up to 3 candidates to represent you. I don't need to be your top choice, but I believe I should be in your top 3. I'm running to help ensure that working class people have a seat at the table because I know firsthand how difficult it can be to afford to live here. Representation matters in local government, and having a diversity of backgrounds and experiences on our council is key to ensuring our budget priorities align with the needs of our residents. I want to steer Monroe County in ways that benefit everyone, not just those who are the most engaged or who have the loudest voices. For more information about my campaign, please visit caldyforcouncil.com or follow Caldy for Council on Facebook or Instagram. I also invite anyone to come speak to me after I get off the stage. I'm excited to meet you all and listen to your ideas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, I want to thank the League for having us, hosting this. This has been an awesome round of questions, some of the best that I think I've ever heard in one of these. So thank you. I just would offer to you that I believe in that thing that I said at the beginning. Elected officials can work together. They can get good things done for the communities when they do it. They can get the big projects done on the hard questions. Today you've heard about all the hard questions. And sometimes folks will say, well, this can't get done, this won't get done. That's too hard. If you look in this community's history, and I love that context, we have a long history of getting hard things done. Our search for a water source in the last 100 years was very arduous. We did it. We got it done. We can do those things. We can ask the tough things. And I believe that working at the table, I exhibit those abilities to do just that. It's been an honor to serve you. If you choose someone else, it's still been an honor to serve you. But I would love to continue that service in the next 4 years. Check me out at trentdeckard.com. And thank you again for having me today.
Thank you to the League and the co-sponsors. Again, it's been a privilege to be up here today to discuss issues or community that matters. And that's really what we're at today is the decision you're all facing is how do we get stuff done and who's best suited to get the stuff done in the next 4 years. Jeff McKim retiring from the council is a loss. His wisdom is a loss, and I hope to only succeed him. No one's going to replace Jeff's leadership as he rolls off of council. But what we're looking for are people that have not only good judgment, but experience and expertise that can address the issues that we're facing facing the next 4 years. This forum is not long enough for us to talk about our diverse backgrounds. I mean, Trent, Cheryl, and I all come from union families, and I grew up with earliest memories of my dad on strike. I mean, we've all have our stories of experience and expertise, but it's what we do with those and how we've used those opportunities and experiences to support our community. The next 4 years are highly consequential. How do we take care of the people that we have? How do we take care of our whole community and get more economic opportunity and housing choices into our community, and who has the experience to do that? That is up to you all to decide. I'm at votedavidhenry.com. I look forward to talking with you more in the next month. Thank you.
Cheryl, close us out.
Along with county commissioners, the council shares the leadership of county government. The council can govern well or not so well through the power of the purse, and that purse belongs to the taxpayers of the county. Setting the county budget requires understanding how the various parts of local government work, knowing community values, weighing obligations, priorities, and future probabilities. In another term on the council, I will work to improve our resilience by expanding affordable housing, decreasing food insecurity, and improving our systems of care for mental health and substance use disorders. To learn more about my goals for the next 4 years, please check out my website, CherylMunson.com. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and the other forum sponsors. Thank you to our audience. I believe experience counts in county government, and I hope you will vote for me, Cheryl Munson, in the primary election.
Thank you so much to our candidates for a lively discussion. Please join me in thanking them. I do have just a few housekeeping items that I want to let you all know about. On behalf of all of the forum sponsors, please remember to vote. You can visit the website vote411.org for an online voter guide that includes written responses to questions from the candidates. Again, that website is vote411.org. And Democrats seeking the U.S. House District 9 seat will participate in a Zoom candidate forum next week on Saturday, April 6th. To register for this Zoom, please visit lwv-bmc.org. That is the League's website, and there is a link on there to sign up for that Zoom. Election Day is Tuesday, May 7th, and early voting begins on Tuesday, April 9th, the day after the eclipse. So thank you all so much for being here, and thank you again to our candidates.